It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
And it's live until we're all dead, which might be sooner than we think. A blessed Palm Sunday to all of you, especially those in Jerusalem who were denied for the first time in many, many centuries the right to enter the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and to commemorate Palm Sunday when Jesus entered Jerusalem in triumph. It's got us all thinking about what the Holy Week was all about and how did it end and who did what to whom on this week 2,000 years ago. Well, it is the mother of all talk shows, and we are on the verge of all-out war on the ground in Iran. What could possibly go wrong? Stay tuned, you'll find out each and every one of them. It's the mother of all talk shows. "400 years of Turkish, Ottoman, Muslim rule. Palm Sunday was impeccably observed. But today, the Cardinal Pizzaballa, an Italian cleric, and a man who was in the running until the last ballots to become the Pope itself, was denied entry by the goons of Benjamin Netanyahu with his retinue of 4. Although the law in Israel allows religious gatherings for up to 50 people, and although all synagogues in Jerusalem were so accommodated, 4 people, including the Cardinal, were denied entry into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, not many of you have been in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Not many of you have even seen pictures of it. And yet it's only a couple of 100 yards from that pagan wall-kissing ceremony that you see so many Western politicians doing. You know, you can't be President of the United States unless you've appeared in a kippah kissing a wall, which is actually a Roman fortress, but don't tell anybody. If it was the temple, it is the temple that Jesus was crucified for calling on the people to tear down into rubble. It isn't actually the temple. It is the Roman fortress. The Romans carried out the execution at the demand of the Pharisees. The high priest was asked by Pontius Pilate if he would free Jesus. Because it was Passover, one of the condemned men was bound by law to be spared. And though he expected them to allow Jesus to live, the high priest of Jerusalem chose Barabbas. Not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of people have seen the church, because that would require Western politicians, who are usually wearing Jesus and Christianity on their sleeves, would have to walk 200 yards and offend their Israeli hosts by kneeling at the stone on which Jesus of Nazareth was laid. The stone which absorbed the blood of Jesus is never visited, ever, by any Western politician. But the cardinal was there, and the magnificent rebuke issued by Meloni, the Italian prime minister, really has to be seen, has to be read to be believed. Totally, utterly magnificent, and I've never said that about Signora Meloni before. Sanchez of Spain, even little Macron of France have denounced this atrocity against Jesus, against the Christian faith, against the hierarchy and the faithful who were denied their rights in Jerusalem today. But nothing so far from Donald Trump or Mike Johnson, who has instead been posting asinine admonitions to the Christians that this is Palm Sunday, don't you know? Not a single mention about what happened in the holy city, in the Holy Land today. Nothing either from Keir Starmer, although he probably doesn't know it's Palm Sunday, the heathen that he is. But although this has greatly offended 1 billion Christians across the world, 1 billion, although it has particularly offended 900 million Roman Catholics around the world, but who cares if they won't stand up for themselves? Who cares if Netanyahu spits in their face? It is, we're told, an ancient Jewish tradition. But everybody's going to care if the 3,500 US Marine Corps sets foot on Iranian soil in the next hours, as is widely expected they will do. I'm so old I've got to remind you that the American ground war in Vietnam began with precisely that number and precisely that regiment. 3,500 US Marines landed in Da Nang in 1965, and they were still there until they were chased off the rooftop, with 58,000 dead Americans, with hundreds of thousands of wounded and maimed Americans, with hundreds of thousands more mentally disturbed for the rest of their life, and more American personnel that served in Vietnam subsequently committed suicide than were killed in the actual combat. The 3,500 are the gallant 600 of the Charge of the Light Brigade at Balaclava, and they will not fare any better. If they land on Karg, though I actually think that's probably an illusion which is being spun as a diversion to the Iranian defenders, Karg Island will sink below the water, and everyone standing on it will sink with it. But wherever the US Marines land, 3,500 of them, in a country of 93 million, that is desperate to see them, desperate to meet them, up close and personal. Wherever it is, it will be the beginning of the almighty clash of civilizations. Though, as Mr. Gandhi famously said, when asked by an American journalist what he thought of Western civilization, he famously replied, "Yes, I think that would be a good idea." but the ancient Persian civilization, and now in confluence tens of millions of devoutly religious observers who are enthralled to the concept of martyrdom, whose entire religion is based on the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, are definitely very keen to meet these 3,500 US Marines. So if your son, your husband, your lover is a member of the US Marine Corps, you better pray extra hard tonight on this Palm Sunday. The war has spread. Nobody expected it, according to Donald Trump, except us here on the mother of all talk shows that you used to watch, Donald. Except Professor Marandi, who told us time without number on this show and told CNN, Sky News, BBC, Piers Morgan, anybody that would give him the opportunity to do so, he told you all that if you attack Iran, Iran will attack every American asset in the Gulf region. And now they're shocked that Iran has done so. Perhaps what they're really shocked about is the power of the Iranian response, the indefatigability of the Iranian response. Every day, every night, hundreds and hundreds of missiles and drones are taking a terrible toll on the putative American invasion force. Every single American base has been evacuated. The hotels to which the armed services have repaired have been forensically taken out and destroyed. The AWACS, an airplane of almost indescribable value, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of AWAC planes have been obliterated on the ground in the American air base in Saudi Arabia. The United Arab Emirates is close to collapse, and every American target in it is now adjudged to be a legitimate target, and every part of the United Arab Emirates. I hate speaking ill of them. I know that I have so many friends there. I spent so much time there. I spent so many hours with the founder of the state, the late and great Sheikh Zayed. I hate speaking ill of it. Believe me, I do. But they have to realize that they checked into the Karma Cafe, where there's no menu. You just get what you deserve. And when you have sold your country to the Israelis and the Americans, and when attacks on your neighbor are being mounted from your territory, what exactly did you expect to happen? And when you seized $500 billion of Iranian assets, do you think they're not going to take that back and more? I know they don't believe in interest out there, but they have an interest in making sure they get their money back, and they will get their money back. Property has crashed in value in Dubai, the playground of the influencer, the playground of the rich and the famous. 25% in 1 month. Property values have crashed, and by the end of this, you won't be able to give them away. When they attacked Iranian universities, what did they expect would be the result? Every American university in the Middle East is now a legitimate target. And it is going to be attacked. And I mean right now, it is going to be attacked. Iran has just issued an evacuation order to everyone in or near an American university in the Middle East to get out, and get out fast. When they attacked Iran's civilian infrastructure, its water, its oil, its vitals, what did they expect would be the result? Iran is now, and now will, to an increasing degree, retaliate. Who wouldn't? If somebody bombed your water works, you'd bomb theirs if you can, and boy, Iran can. The astounding success rate of the Iranian bombardment of the Zionist state of Israel is reducing the country to fear and panic. At least 1 million, maybe 2 million Israelis have left the country, and many of them will never come back. Having sold itself as the state of the Jews, where Jews would need to be in order to be safe, they have produced the least safe people, the least safe place for Jews anywhere in the world. And at least 1 million of them have fled. Many of those with double passports, because they only came to Israel in pursuit of the Zionist dream of occupying and exploiting other people's land and resources from already comfortable existence in European and North American countries principally, but also from Russia. Well, they know now exactly the level of the mistake that they made. Many of them are fleeing to Cyprus, illegally entering Cyprus. They are these illegal asylum seekers landing on the beach. Although it's not the beach of Dover, it's the beaches of Greece. It's the beaches of Cyprus. They're trying to buy Greek islands to make little Israels there. More fool the Greek government, more fool the Cypriot government, if they allow the export of this total crisis that exists in the world to their sovereign territory. Not that all of it is sovereign territory. 1 million people were out on the streets of Istanbul today, demanding the closure of the American NATO bases in Turkey, from which missions to kill Iranian schoolgirls are being regularly launched. What do you expect Muslims in Turkey to feel when a strutting Okinawa-style American occupation of a part of their country is being used to bomb other Muslims, women, girls, little boys, old men? What do you expect to happen? And so the crisis in NATO, already at critical point, has just multiplied on a different front altogether. NATO is in one hell of a mess. The NATO leaders and Donald Trump are trading insults, the likes of which have never been seen or heard before. Trump gave a speech in Miami which may mark a seminal point in the cognitive decline and degeneration of an American president, coming right on the back of a president that shit his pants in front of the late Pope Francis. May God be pleased with him. Not Donald Trump, not Joe Biden, but the late Pope, whose successor, Pope Leo, spoke so powerfully today. 7 times he described Jesus as the King of Peace in his homily. 7 times. And he warned Western politicians that their prayers invoking the name of God to justify wholesale slaughter and the glorying in their wealth and power and privilege will never be accepted. It being, of course, easier for a camel to enter through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. The Turks are up in arms. The Europeans are up in arms. Trump started this war in Iran without even telling them, never mind consulting them. Then he's demanding that they all join in. And when they show the slightest reluctance. He insults them in a way that even George W. Bush would have blanched from doing. And he called the French cheese-eating surrender monkeys, if you recall, banned French fries from the canteens in Washington, D.C. But the Americans are making it plain. Trump is making it plain that NATO is finished. Rubio said so. Trump said so in Miami, where he delivered a homily so lurid and so pregnant with meaning that I swear to you they'll be writing PhDs about that speech in 100 years from now. Time does not permit me to go into the myriad of extraordinary statements, contradictions, and false claims, because I need to concentrate on the one that will have the most long-lasting impact. I have nothing in common with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He's the last man I would leap to the barricades in order to defend. But when Donald Trump, in front now of the entire world, sometimes I think Trump doesn't realize that you're not just speaking to the people in the hall that you're immediately addressing, that cameras exist and they capture what you say and they spread it across the entire world. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, this mighty behemoth of a financial power which has given so much to Donald Trump and Jared Kushner personally, never mind to the United States of America. Trump boasted that MBS, the Crown Prince, has to kiss his ass. Now, an ass is not a pretty thing, particularly where Donald Trump's has been. It's an insult in any language. But in Arabic, when you are referring to the man who will shortly be the custodian of the two holy mosques in Mecca and Medina, when you are talking about a man who will shortly be in charge of the most sacred Islamic places on the earth, when you are openly mocking the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia as a man that kisses that foul part of your anatomy, you lard arse, President Donald Trump, you have no idea what you have unleashed. The great Chay Bowes is coming up. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me one brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, here's the poll for the evening. Should Iran build a nuclear weapon? Duh. Should it have built a nuclear weapon? I'd say yes. Should Iran build a nuclear weapon? 50,000 people have already voted. Yes or no. On my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and if you're one of the creme de la creme and you support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. You can vote on any of these portals. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the United States and Canada. The number is +1 844 944 3344. You can call free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Chay Bowes, political analyst supreme and good friend of mine, joins me from Moscow. Chay, before we go into the bigger picture, I know that you're not a fantastically religious man, but you must be seized of the unholy significance of the outrage that took place with Cardinal Pizzaballa today in Jerusalem, and all the signs are it is resounding across Christendom, at least the Roman Catholic part of that. The evangelicals and the American WASPs don't seem that concerned about it. But I think myself it's a major blunder by Netanyahu. What do you think?
Yeah, of course, George. And I think something that's most interesting about this is that it's symptomatic of an Israeli, I'll say Israeli, but I think Netanyahu's government's belief now, which kind of ties into Donald Trump's renewed energy and enthusiasm for conflict and war, the Department of War. This idea that we can do anything we want. I just heard Benjamin Netanyahu talking about comparing Jesus Christ and Genghis Khan. I was speaking about this last night, suggesting that regardless of the teachings of Jesus, Genghis Khan would beat him in a one-to-one fight. That's how morality is being compressed into might is right, as Israel bombs all of its neighbors, as it kills journalists in Lebanon, attempts to kill my friend, your friend, our colleague and friend, Steve Sweeney, live on TV. And the client media in the UK and in Ireland, our respective home countries, completely ignoring this. An individual nearly is struck by a missile. I mean, the language is absolutely remarkable. Meanwhile, a man representing one of the biggest religions on earth, obviously Christianity, and its various silos, if you like. As you say, I'm not an overly religious man, although I was raised in Catholic Ireland, and nobody knows Catholicism like a Catholic Irishman. Believe me, after an education from the Christian Brothers, we know our prayers, we know our catechism. But what this type of thing does, in my view, is it's a rally round the flag effect. Even me, as a cultural Catholic, let's say, feel a little bit of anger about this. So it pulls people who may have strayed away from the flock, if you like, back towards the standard. In hoc signum. This we bear holy. This idea that Israel now believes it can this affront to the most senior representative of one of the most holy, revered churches and powerful and influential churches on earth. It just demonstrates this attitude that seems to be ingrained now in Israel, in Israeli politics, in pro-Zionist circles, as you say, in the United States of America and in Europe, which is now essentially an irrelevant back of the hall person shouting if they can above the crowd. But it just signifies this: we're going to do exactly as we want to whoever we want, and absolutely nobody's going to stop us, because the previous guarantor, this a la carte, of course, guarantor of international law, used to be, well, at least, ostensibly used to be, and you and I know this is not true and never was really true, was the United States. But now the United States, under President Trump, has dropped even the illusion of trying to guarantee the normalcy of any kind of illusion of international law. The United Nations has become an utterly irrelevant talk shop. It's definitely sliding towards becoming the League of Nations. We're seeing so many comparisons with the vacuum that preceded the Second World War, if you like, the conditions that existed, the refusal of people to speak up against obvious and abject affronts to humanity, like the killing of these children in this school in Iran. This has nothing to do with whether you agree or disagree with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Absolutely nothing to do with it. You either agree or disagree that killing a school full of children, 165 people and their teachers, is acceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And it has to be called out as unacceptable by everybody, or else that little seed, that germ, that germination of allowing that type of catastrophic strike on ordinary civilians is allowed to permeate along and to grow into justification for the next strike, whatever that will be. And as you say, this really, I would say, repulsive invocation of divine sort of justification for this type of this war of choice. This is a war of choice. Every day that goes by, it becomes more and more impossible to deny that this is an absolute war of choice against Iran. The invocation of some sort of divine inspiration or protection it makes Gott mit uns look like a child's picnic, George.
We'll come back to a number of those points, Chay, brilliantly made by you. But let's start in Moscow. Mr. Peskov, the spokesman of President Putin, said something I thought very portentous today. He said that relations between Russia and America had more or less ground to a halt. He said that the relations between the two countries had never been worse. I haven't heard him say things like that before. It's beginning to look like the spirit of Alaska has spirited away.
Yeah, Dmitry Peskov, who's Mr. Putin's press secretary, spokesman. So if he's saying these things, they can be taken as official position or as close to it as you're going to get. So that's interesting in itself. He's not a man prone to personal view, if you like. He's very careful, as you know. You'll have watched him over the years. He's a man that's very careful, very cautious. So this is quite an interesting statement. Now, we've known that, particularly in the Biden era, and particularly since the beginning of the Russian intervention in Ukraine, that, the relationship between Russia and the United States has been very, very poor, at its most poor. But the question I need to ask, and I'd suggest our viewers ask, is, does this have anything to do with what's happening in Iran and the various baseless allegations that Russia is supplying, intelligence, equipment, whatever it may be or may not be, as the Kremlin's position is that it's not, to Iran? And has that quickened or hastened or frozen somewhat the warming between Russia and the United States of America? Of course, we've got two strands to the diplomacy, if you like. You've got Lavrov and Rubio, and you've got people like Kirill Dmitriev and Steve Witkoff. So you've got two strands of this rapprochement, if you like, between Russia and America, which was going very well, particularly on the commercial side. Great ideas. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. My view and my belief, and again, I don't know this, but watching, and you may agree or may not agree, I think this has to do with Iran. And I think this has to do with the allegations or the suggestions that Russia and China are in some way tacitly or in the background assisting Iran. For example, there was an exceptionally valuable American military asset destroyed in a Saudi airbase, an E-3 Sentry aircraft, $1 billion worth of kit. Now, it's not the $1 billion because, as we know, the Americans can print the currency So it's not really the issue about what it costs. This war is costing $1 billion a day. We're well into 20 billion at this stage. The issue is the replaceability. These are very hard to replace. This comes on top of two very, very important American radars being damaged or put out of commission, which again is showing in the fact that these highly advanced Iranian missiles can seemingly strike at will into Israel now. So this has had a real impact. And we know that Iran doesn't really have its own command and control infrastructure when it comes to space-based, being able to see what's happening. We know China does. They can read your registration plate, your Valentine card, we're told. The Russians also do. So I believe that this is in some way related to that. I don't see a reason why, given that Marco Rubio yesterday saying that Vladimir Zelensky is a liar. He openly suggested that the man is a liar, saying that Russia had, America's demanding that the Ukrainians give up Donbass before giving guarantees, security guarantees. So I think this is to do with the exceptionally ill-judged misadventure in Iran, which is going from bad to worse, as you say. From a military point of view, they're incurring very serious losses. If you were looking at the American military and its essential military architecture, it's something I'm interested in. The E-3 Sentry is a very rare, exceptionally valuable piece of a military kit, and it's been torn in half by an exceptionally accurate strike by the Iranians. This is an Iranian missile forces that we were told is completely been defanged and declawed. We're getting told this every day, but every day we're seeing images of increasingly complex and successful from an Iranian point of view, very damaging from an American point of view strikes, which all feed into what you said earlier in your introduction. And Professor Morandi said, I remember Professor Morandi saying very distinctly, what Iran will do is in the initial phases of a conflict, they will drain Israeli and regional bases of air defense missiles. They will strike radars, and then they will start to deploy the heavy goods, if you like. And that seems to have been exactly what they've done. And as you say, this was not a secret. The dogs in the street knew this would happen. I and you and many others I was posting videos of huge labyrinthine subterranean missile bases. The CIA estimated that Tehran had around 80,000 Shahed drones before the Americans began their strikes in this phase of the war. To suggest that there's any surprise that this has happened is quite remarkable. And it just feeds into this sense of misadventure. And I think the Americans are now going to be sort of navel gazing and ruminating on what to do next. And one of those things will probably be this sort of related anger with Russia and China, despite the fact that absolutely no evidence has been offered to suggest that anything other than open source satellite imagery is responsible for the Iranians being able to target this stuff. And the Iranians, remember, are exceptionally capable people who've developed these awesome weapons and this awesome capability while the most sanctioned country on planet Earth. It's really, really quite remarkable, George.
Moving west, Chay, and I recall vividly your own personal experience of rigged European elections in Romania when you turned out as an European Union citizen in the perfectly legal and legitimate role of a reporter to report on the shenanigans, now entirely discredited legally in Romania, in the desperate effort to stop Georgescu becoming the president of Romania. They pulled out the usual rabbit that Georgescu was Russian-backed, and the Romanian courts have just recently, in the last week or two, declared there was absolutely no basis for that allegation. Ergo, Georgescu was forced out of the presidential race that he was winning by a country mile on an entirely bogus perspective. You went there to report, were dragged off a plane and deported from the country. Well, now we've got another European election coming up in Hungary, and they are desperate to ensure the defeat of the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Why is that? And are they likely to succeed?
Yeah, a good synopsis, George. What happened in Romania was probably the most overt and shocking subversion of the democratic will of a European country in the post-Soviet period. Absolutely remarkable. A completely manufactured fallacy, and the basis of which was the man was too popular. Kalin Georgescu was too popular. He was doing too well. Huge amounts of EU money mobilized into the country. Intelligence services, people like Pavel Durov, the head of Telegram being the preeminent communication system in Eastern Europe, in post-Soviet countries, really, and particularly in Romania, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, etc. He was warned by the French intelligence, summoned, and told, if you suppress Mr. Georgescu in Telegram, we will then drop the case, the trumped-up charges that we've developed against you. That's the level of interference by the European Union. We had people like the Commissioner for EU Enlargement, Marta Kos. We've had her selecting politicians from Serbia. Alexander Vulin, for example, being told we don't want him in the government next time in Serbia. This remarkable level of, braggadocio, to just say that they can walk into a country and say, this is not going to happen. We're going to ensure that Viktor Orban isn't the new Prime Minister of Hungary. And Ursula von der Leyen has said that also in speeches. So this is an overt demonstration of the slide into autocracy in Europe. And in particular, what's interesting about Hungary is that usually we would have seen the CIA broadly aligned with the European Union's, various intelligence services and the British, the MI6, in these operations. They would have been, hand in glove working together. Now we believe, and I have some sources that suggest to me that the Americans are working to supply information to the incumbent government about operations that are happening against them with the backing of the EU. We've had very interesting revelations that an IT specialist working for the government was actually a spy, a Ukrainian spy. He was responsible for facilitating the tapping of Peter Szijjártó's phone, the Hungarian foreign minister. We've had threats from radical neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine to target Viktor Orban and his family in their homes if he didn't unblock 90 billion euros worth of aid to the dictatorship in Ukraine. So this is the battle royal now. But what's interesting is, and it's not something many people are actually realizing or focusing on, is that the Americans on this occasion, because Donald Trump is supporting and has openly endorsed Viktor Orban as to win the election, are at odds with each other. And that again is part of a wider schism that's opening up between the United States of America and NATO. So it's a remarkably important thing that's going to be happening. I'm going to be traveling there myself. Hopefully I'll be there for the period of the elections, again trying to find out what's actually happening, what's happening on the ground. So I'll be happy to talk to you about it as it happens. But I don't think anybody can underestimate the absolutely critical nature of this election on the 12th of April and how it will impact on the very future of not only the European Union, but also potentially on NATO. Hungary is a NATO country. It is a European country, but it's been the bad boy at the back of the class for quite some time. It's being fined, for example, €1 million a month for not allowing open borders as per the prescribed EU treaties. They've refused outright, along with Robert Fico and Slovakia, to facilitate loans to Ukraine. They've outright refused to cut themselves off from cheap and reliable Russian energy. And how right Mr. Orban and Mr. Fico were. Now that we see the chronic situation that the Europeans have reversed themselves into, and this pseudo-religious perpetuation of that ideology, that under no circumstances will we turn back on Nord Stream, as Mr. Putin suggests. Just turn it back on. We'll sell you the gas. You don't need to freeze. So this is a remarkably crucial moment in Europe for the EU, for NATO, and for the whole geostrategic shape of the region. It's really, really remarkable stuff.
Well, we might just yet see the end of NATO and the EU in our lifetime, Chay. Something that I, at least, will rejoice. As always, a tour of the horizon, a tour de force. The great Chay Bowes, the Irishman in Moscow. Thanks for joining us indeed. Let me take a quick break, and then we'll go to Lance in Canada on Iran, because, hey, this is the Global University of the Airwaves. Stay tuned. I wonder if there's more to it, Anthony. She says not, but might she be preparing for a presidential run?
You very well may, but Americans don't like a quitter. So even if she was starting to speak some truth, we're not going to take that very well.
Fair point. Very, very fair point. But Donald Trump's political position looks to me now extremely isolated. He has destroyed a very considerable part of his most militant base. He hasn't just lost Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's lost Tucker Carlson, he's almost entirely lost Alex Jones, he has substantially lost the support of Steve Bannon, and many, many others are beginning to question his judgment, and some even to question his continuing fitness for office. So he's in a very weak position. But if he wanted to, he could take the bull by the horns on this Ukraine question. He could say, stop sabotaging me. Don't think by leaking things you're going to divert me. I'm serious. I'm ending this war, and I'm certainly going to end America's involvement in this war.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, heading for 55,000 votes cast now. Should Iran build a nuclear weapon? Yes or no? Overwhelmingly, people say yes. I would have added the caveat they should have before now. But let's hear from a wise commentator, regular on the show, Lance in Canada on Iran. Lance, welcome back.
I heard something about Iran the other day. I think it went like this. It was, what is the difference between Iran and Vietnam? Trump had a plan to get out of Vietnam.
Iran is many times the size of Vietnam for a start. But yes, this 3,500 Marines, Lance, it's exactly what the U.S. landed in Da Nang in 1965.
No, but I suppose the punchline was, what is the difference between Iran and Vietnam? Trump had a plan to get out of Vietnam.
Well, he did 5 times. He dodged the war in Vietnam. But it's a very good gag, yes. Very good gag.
But I guess my question, there has to be, like for these, you call them satrapies. I feel like you need to dig deeper into your vocabulary and find something worse even. But when you see these Gulf states doing what they're doing and siding with what they're siding, there has to be some vehicle by which, let's say, the Western elite and the Israeli elite have convinced the people who are wealthy in the satrapies that they are valuable and that they're not, down the line, whatever happens, we still need you and you're still wonderful. But I just don't understand how the going along works. I don't even understand Lebanon. Like Hezbollah, I understand Hezbollah is a Shia organization necessarily, but if Israel says they're taking all the land, well, they're taking people's homes who are more than Shia. They're Christians. There's all kinds of people. There's Christians. There's Sunnis. There's probably some of those Coptic people. So, I mean, how do they get the government to go along with this, or the elite in that country to go along with this?
Well, let me go for the harder word than satrapy. These are slave governments. They entered into their slavery voluntarily, but when you are a slave government, you don't get to tell the master what the house rules are. The master is the master of the house. I'll come to Lebanon in a minute, which is a little bit more complicated. But the situation in the Gulf is perfectly simple. A Faustian pact has been reached by utterly unrepresentative family dictatorships and the United States of America, which has gradually, and to a greater extent in some of them than in others, forced them to come to terms with Israel and to abandon what they previously saw as their Arab and Islamic dignity in maintaining at least rhetorical attachment to the Palestinian people and their cause. And so now there are two masters. There's the American master and the Israeli master. And whilst almost always they are in tandem, they are not entirely always in tandem. So, for example, Saudi Arabia would not join the Abraham Accords. It would not normalize its relationship with Israel, even though, of course, covertly, under the table, they had relations. They would never publicly renounce the Palestinian cause in the way that these other Arab slave governments have done. And they wouldn't join the accord. They wouldn't afford recognition. They wouldn't normalize their relationship. And the price that they've paid is a protection racket price. It's literally a protection packet. Although, as I always say, at least when you pay the Genovese family in New York for protection, after a fashion, they will give you protection. If somebody trashes your business or some freelance thief wants to rob from you, the mob, the mafia, will impose themselves on you, on them, and will ask you for a higher premium in future. But Trump hasn't even done that. He literally abandoned the people that have been paying him and his country a king's ransom and more for decades, half a century, more than half a century in the case of Saudi Arabia. So those countries, public, are increasingly asking, and sometimes it now makes it onto the television in these satrapies, well, what were we paying for all along? We didn't get any protection. We would have been better paying Iran for protection. And one of them at least has now done so, which is why that one in particular is no longer on the news receiving Iranian missiles and drones. The others, on the other hand, like the UAE, have doubled down. Just this day, the UAE stole $500 billion from Iran in Iranian investments in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They just literally stole them. Now, with all respect, at least to the late, great Sheikh Zayed, they better reverse that very quickly. If I was them, I'd give that money back right now, because the price that you will pay for that act of theft on a gargantuan scale will be far more than you think you obtained by the theft. The public are, of course, a different matter. Not all of these royal dictatorships are as unpopular as each other, although they have deep pockets of, no pun intended, of unpopularity within them. So Saudi Arabia, for example, it has people who hate the fact that Saudi Arabia is now much, much less Islamic a country than it was before the emergence of MBS. Of course, there are people who support the liberal reforms of MBS, but there are a very large number of people who don't. And there are a very large number of the 30,000 princes in the Saudi royal house, 30,000, who would be happy to ride that horse if it might take them to power in a family coup. There are a whole number in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, around Tehran, which is the main oil-producing region of Saudi Arabia, who are Shiites, and whose sympathies, of course, lie with Iran rather than with the Wahhabi ideology of the House of Saud before MBS took it LGBTQ+, before MBS took it Jeffrey Epstein, whose friend he was. The other dictatorships, like Bahrain, for example, are absolutely bereft of any support whatsoever. They were a British imposition of a puppet monarch without any support amongst the local people, particularly the 80% who are Shiites. Don't forget that Bahrain was part of Iran in 1971. I could tell you the records that were number one in the charts in 1971. That's how long ago it was. I could tell you the footballers that were strutting their stuff down the King's Road in Chelsea in 1971. In 1971, Bahrain was part of Iran. The British broke it away and appointed a guy with no support at all, except amongst the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia and the British and then American naval bases in the territory. It's a very small territory, but it's very strategically placed. Now, today, almost all of Bahrain was out on the streets in a demonstration. Sunni, 20%, and Shia, 80%, demanding the fall of the dictatorship. And their goose is absolutely cooked. They will be gone. I don't know if Iran will take back Bahrain, but there'll definitely be an entirely new Bahrain as a result of this conflict. The UAE, the one I know the best, was a jewel. It was a dignified Arab and Islamic country that did well for itself. It discovered oil and gas, but it managed the oil and gas business very well, invested the largesse very, very cleverly. They took care of the environment. They literally made the desert bloom. They introduced new animals that had disappeared from the place. I've been many times in Sheikh Zayed's private plane. I went to an island which is an ecological treasure house that has been rescued from oblivion and turned into a natural wonderland. But since the demise of Sheikh Zayed, of blessed memory, his sons, a succession of them, though they have engaged in a little bit of fratricide along the way, have taken the country into full-scale American and Israeli slavery. And they are now paying a very, very high price for that. In Lebanon, the situation is more complicated. Lebanon was carved out of by the Sykes-Picot Agreement of Syria, of which it is naturally and legitimately a part. Syria and Lebanon were one country. The area around Mount Lebanon was carved out by French imperialism secretly. We only know about the Sykes-Picot Agreement because of the Russian Revolution, which exposed the secret treaties that had been reached for the Middle East and proved that Britain and France had completely betrayed the Arabs. They promised the Arabs unity and independence if they would rise up against the Ottomans, who were fighting on the side of the Germans, the Axis, but they never had any intention whatsoever of honoring that promise. They instead carved up areas of influence and control between themselves. And I used to walk past every day in Parliament the very room in which Sykes and Picot, with their pencils and their rulers, were drawing up these fake states, and Lebanon was one of those. The problem is that the Lebanese people are deeply divided on a confessional basis. There are Christians, different kinds of Christians. There are Sunnis, different kinds of Sunnis, and there are Shiites. The Shiites are easily the biggest population in Lebanon. If Hassan Nasrallah had wanted to be the president of Lebanon, which he couldn't be because you have to be a Christian to be the president of Lebanon, but Hezbollah and Nasrallah could have taken Lebanon any day of the week and in one day. But they did not want to do so. They wanted to preserve the balance of the three main populations, Sunni, Shia, and Christian, in Lebanon. But the problem is, although there are patriotic Sunnis, Arab nationalists, some of them are very, very close friends of mine and have been for half a century. They are less important than they used to be. After the fall of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, that kind of Sunni has become weaker. And the traitor element amongst the Sunni population, allied to the traitor part of the Christian population in Lebanon, have basically volunteered to become agents of Israel and America. So they are now determined to disarm the Lebanese resistance. Good luck with that, lads. You won't last 5 minutes. Now, a warm word of thanks to some of tonight's top donors who've been onto the website. That's moats.tv, to support the program. Bill Galley, Sharon McIntosh, Barbara and Rich Tshudi, Steve Greenwood, and Melvin Battersby. You any relation to Roy, the late, great film director? If you'd like to join them, please visit moats.tv. Select the Donate Now button and contribute whatever you can in any currency. Every donation helps, keeps this show strong and independent, and twice a week. Donald is in Copenhagen, another wise correspondent, and he wants to talk about NATO. No wonder. Go on, Donald.
Yeah, hi, George. Well, wise. Well, thank you for the compliment. Now Denmark has been in some kind of conflict with NATO due to Greenland, and Donald Trump just told him, well, it's a nice territory you got here. Shame if anything happened to it. Why don't you help support NATO? So we're donating and contributing to that. And this term security that they toss around a lot, that's a very important word, the security. I'm not worried about Russia coming over and taking over Denmark or Portugal or any of these other countries here and marching into Europe to conquer it. But security, to me, means that we have a relatively peaceful world. in regards to maintaining our food, shelter, and clothing. And of course, to make that as convenient as possible, we have transportation and communication. And with those things said, security to some people, particularly those that are contributing and have the strings to pull on the Treasury, are contributing constantly to this weapons industry in the United States. So to them, security means keep the conflict going. To others, it means stop the conflict. So there we have this opposing view of what that word security means. And incidentally, this conflict with Iran and going on with Israel, and I can guarantee you this, that Mr. Trump, our president, the leader of the free world, he is now cooperating with the policies of Israel. And I want to bring this to your attention. We did have a president who was opposed to the policies of Israel. And you know what happened to him? His name was John Kennedy, and he opposed absolutely to Israel and its power and dominance, and he was going to do something about it. Well, obviously, Mr. Trump is cooperating with them because he knows very well what will happen to him if he doesn't, and it's based in fear for his own little life. And that's all he's concerned about. He's very selfish, egotistical, and self-centered, and he has no ability to see what the rest of the world, how the rest of the world functions in comfort in regards to the food, shelter, and clothing that we all need. So there it is in a nutshell. Mr. Trump is motivated out of fear, and it has nothing to do with the well-being of this planet. And I'm not concerned too much about this nuclear deterrence, nuclear threat of nuclear atomic bombs, because it did not cause Japan to surrender. And Japan did not surrender because the two bombs were dropped on it. It was only when Truman invited Stalin to come and help with his campaign against Japan that when Stalin agreed to cooperate, Japan surrendered. They're a state by themselves, and Russia has enough to look at it after its own territory and peoples within it. It's not going to attack us, and they can be our ally completely. And I hope that the outcome of this thing in the Middle East, that Palestine can become Palestine again. And
Make Palestine again. I'm so old that I'm against Germany and Japan and with Russia and China. How messed up is that? And you're so old that you still can use the words that America is the leader of the free world. I haven't heard that one for quite some time, and it's never sounded more hollow. I said you were wise. Wise you are. You've summed up the exact situation. And Donald Trump is afraid of Israel killing him, like they almost certainly helped kill Jack Kennedy, like they almost certainly helped kill Charlie Kirk, and he's afraid that they'll help kill him, without a doubt. But he's afraid of something even more urgent. He's afraid of what they've got on him in the Epstein files. So these Marines that are preparing to put their boots on the ground in Iran should always remember what they're fighting for. They're fighting for the keeping secret of Donald Trump's revolting, disgusting, degenerate behavior towards young girls and even some girls not legally available to him. They're fighting to protect Donald Trump from allegations of rape against young, defenseless girls. That's what you're fighting for, Mr. Marine Corps. Thanks, Donald. Now you can scan the QR code on the screen now and leave me some comments on the YouTube stream. Like Stephen and Vin, who send 50 British pounds. Thank you, Stephen and Vin. And they say 9 million on the streets of the USA. The irony of this conflict may well be that Iran achieves regime change in the US and Israel. I wrote a piece on Facebook where my numbers are becoming almost unbelievable. In the last 28 days, 101 million people viewed my content on Facebook, and I'm using it now because there's no British newspaper going to give me a column to write regularly as well as post videos and so on. And it's doing very well. It's about this kings issue, no kings issue. Kings are bad news in this day and age, and those that are not kings but think they are and act like they are no better and arguably worse. Lati FC1 says, I estimate that the invasion of Iran would occur between the 1st and the 9th of April to coincide with the Jewish holiday of Pesach. And Lake Vacum sends $19.99. Many thanks to you. Says, I'm pretty sure Jesus did not say, love your enemy except the Palestinians. And Couple Keba says, yes, Iran should reconsider its nuclear position in the light of recent developments. North Korea is relatively safe today because of nuclear weapons. Let's squeeze one last call in before the break. Richard in Durham on the pole itself. Richard, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Health and strength, George.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah barakatuh.
To you and all of your family and team. The call is not a question, but rather a point of view relating to the poll tonight. I rarely vote in the poll because I always wish there was a third option. But tonight, I voted on the minority. No, Iran doesn't need nuclear weapons, based on 2 points. The first is subjective and emotional. The second is factual. So the first is, I feel that nuclear weapons are a sort of testosterone answer to other problems. And the factual answer is that Iran has proved in the last few weeks, without nuclear weapons, that their preparation, determination, belief, and execution of their actions doesn't require nuclear weapons to succeed in defend successfully.
Yeah, sure, Richard, but they're paying a very high price, or rather their schools are, and their hospitals are, and their universities are, their civilian population is, and none of that would be happening if they had the weaponry that North Korea has. So I don't really see that the logic you are engaging in is really all that persuasive. I prefer the old saw that once bitten, twice shy. Iran has now been bitten and bitten and bitten and bitten and bitten, and it will continue to be bitten unless the obvious price to be paid by the biter is such that it deters them. After all, that's what we were told was the reason for our possession of nuclear weapons, that they were the ultimate deterrent, that nobody would attack us if we could hit them back, if they did, with a nuclear weapon. And I'm against nuclear weapons. I was arrested and thrown into jail outside the nuclear weapons base at Faz Lane, and gave the only interview ever given on the BBC by a man being carried upside down whilst it was happening. I hate nuclear weapons. I hate war. I hate bombs. I've been bombed more than once. I know what war is, looks, smells, feels like. There I am. There I am. How did you get that footage? There's me giving an interview to the BBC, upside down, being carried by 4 of the Strathclyde Police's finest. Well, look, Richard, thanks for that. I'll be right back after the break. There's loads of calls coming in tonight, and the first of them will be the big tomato. He says tomato, I say tomato. Let's call the whole thing off. No, he's in California and wants to talk about the BRICS, and he's right up after this break. Stay tuned. beautiful call, as always, robust. Terrific characterization of little Macron and the imposter Shah of Los Angeles. He is, of course, an imposter in two ways. He's an imposter in pretending that he has any support from the great mass of the 90 million Iranians who've not seen him since he was 4 years old, when he fled with their riches in the saddlebags, and the father and mother, emperor, empress, Shah, roamed around the world from Monaco to God knows where, spending the millions that they had stolen from the people of Iran. But he's a pretender, an imposter, for a second reason. The Pahlavis are not even the royal family of Iran. The royal family of Iran is ancient, millennia, and the rightful emperor or Shah, if there is such a thing as a rightful emperor, rightful Shah, was overthrown by a corporal in the Iranian army, the grandfather of this joker Reza. His grandfather was a corporal, a private soldier in the Iranian army, was raised to the rank of corporal, and then, with British backing, overthrew the actual monarch. And he had a son who was the infamous Shah of Shahs, the father of Reza. So he's a double imposter.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
He's a double imposter. How could he survive a denunciation like that? Well, he was at the CPAC conference in North America, although not many others were, and he issued a clarion call that he intends to make Iran great again. Okay, let's go to the big tomato, or the big tomato, as we call him here in the United Kingdom. Welcome, sir, in California on the BRICS. What would you like to say?
Howdy, George. Question for you. You know, I'm still a bit perturbed, bothered, as I know probably many are, by the decisions that we've seen India make in the course in the course leading up to, and maybe even during the onset of this current conflict, including obviously what occurred with the facilitating of the attack at sea on the frigate leaving what was a friendly assembly or demonstration in India a couple of weeks ago. And obviously, India seems to have paid some bit of a price economically, as they've now had to go groveling back, I suppose, to Russia for their energy needs. But ultimately, with India, you know, as a central BRICS member, I suppose founding BRICS member, is it likely that they're going to pay any actual cost, whether it's being, excommunicated at the most extreme sort of like manifestation of this? I understand they're hosting a coming BRICS summit. Conveniently, it would seem that the I in BRICS could be replaced conveniently to a different I, a country that seems to be a bit more aligned with what the BRICS is about, by comparison to India, which is just disgracing our legacy or culture there, functioning once again as just a petty chaiwala for Western forces. It's so disappointing, heartbreaking to see.
Yes, although you shouldn't have had you shouldn't have harbored too many illusions about them or about BRICS as a whole. BRICS is not that kind of an organization. It's not a Comintern. It's a million miles away from the Comintern. There's no line to which every member of the BRICS is supposed to adhere. It's consensual decision making. So, for example, Venezuela was not permitted at Kazan last year, or was that 2 years ago? I can't recall now. But Kazan summit that Gayatri and I attended turned down the application of Venezuela because Brazil, under Lula, President Lula, refused to accede. So its decisions are made on consensus. Ergo, no excommunication of India will take place. It's more important, I think the majority of the BRICS members will think, to have India inside the tent at least some of the time, rather than outside the tent, especially if, having been physically thrown outside of the tent, they throw their weight entirely into the American empire's camp. The BRICS is supposed to adhere on economic and political matters to a broad anti-hegemony position. And sometimes India does that. It has done to some extent on the issue of the Russia-Ukraine war. It has not done on the case of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and still less on the Israel-Iran conflict. And in fact, their behavior has been, as you described, entirely disgraceful. It might come to pass that India will absent itself from the BRICS, though it's a trifle unfortunate that they are hosting the next BRICS summit. Neither Gayatri or I will be attending that one, I can assure you. Thank you, sir. Have you downloaded the Moats podcast yet? You can get it simply by scanning that QR code on your screen now. Listen to the weekly podcast also via moats.tv website. And once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review. This week we rank in the top 10 for politics in Liberia, Uruguay, Senegal, Bahrain, and Nigeria. And we're in the top 20 for politics in Egypt, Kenya, Finland, and Pakistan. Let's go to Mary in Canada on Iran. Mary, welcome.
Hi, George. I have been watching your show. I'm a huge, huge fan. And
Thank you.
I want to talk about your question of the day. Should Iran have a nuclear weapon? Of course they should, you know. And I agree with you what you had said earlier about how come America, or Israel for that matter, nobody messes with North Korea. Why? Because they have nuclear weapons. If Iran, and they keep on saying, Iran should not have nuclear weapons. But guess who has nuclear weapons? Israel. And nobody ever says that they shouldn't have it. And nobody ever questions.
They've got hundreds of nuclear weapons that can hit anywhere they can hit Canada. They can hit anywhere.
Never says anything because, oh my God, they are the victims. And I am so sick and tired of them playing the victim card. It's over. It's done. The whole world sees them for exactly who they are. They are the terrorists.
Well, I think that's very powerful words, and your tone is absolutely correct to be outraged. But the show goes on, and there's a limit to my argument and yours. Russia has the greatest number of nuclear bombs in the whole world, more than 6,000 of them, and the missile technology to deliver them to anywhere within minutes. But they have been messing with Russia. They have dared Russia to use the weaponry that they have, and have conventionally attacked Russia. I mean, just yesterday, a major attack on Russia's oil reserves and storage depots at a time where we're supposed to be trying to avoid the oil shortage in the world. So it's not 100% true that if you've got nuclear weapons, no one will attack you, ergo Russia. But if I was Iran, facing not one but two nuclear-armed powers who have not once but multiple times attacked your country, I think they've been foolish not to get themselves a nuclear deterrent of the North Korean kind. Brilliant call, Mary. I'll never forget it. Prince is in Texas on the same subject. On you go, Prince.
Hey, George. How you doing, sir? I just want to talk about, I want to mostly just talk about the whole Western hypocrisy about this whole war. I noticed the UN, which I don't know why it still exists, condemned Iranian aggression. I noticed that the EU condemned Iranian aggression. I noticed that everybody is asking Iran to stop attacking the other Gulf countries, but I've not heard any single person talk about the condemn the killing of 180 kids. I hear somebody like Piers Morgan, whom I think is a shapeshifter. You hear people like that, and that's even, I don't know if you watched the interview with Tucker and the economist lady and all this other, Professor Miranda's interview with the so-called British journalist. You see all of them, they have like this very, they're like robotics. They don't think on their own, because none of them can understand that maybe why are we attacking, why is there a war in Iran? Why are we attacking Iran? They say American interest, that Iran is attacking American interest in the Gulf region. What is American interest doing in the Gulf region? Has anybody ever asked them that? Secondly, we now know that we sponsored ISIS. And so why is any of these people, they say Iran is the top worst state sponsor of terrorism? Why have they none of them ever brought this to any of the American and Israeli diplomats? Why? So, by the way, what's the definition of terrorism again? Now, the last point to this is just a way for me to understand that almost everything I've been told in history, because I'm seeing things with my naked eyes, I'm seeing things live. Almost everything they've told me about history is a lie, because if I can watch kids protest here about the genocide in Gaza, and they call them, they say they're making Jews uncomfortable. If I see all of those things and I watch them rewrite history in front of my eyes, Mike Pompeo even said it, then it tells me that what about the things that happened when I was not born? How do I believe it? So, I mean, A, for one, is stupid because they're doing a disservice to themselves in their narrative, but B, it is just a way for me to understand that either A, they don't consider the life of the Iranians and all the people in the Middle East the same as the Western lives, or B, they are just hypocrites. I don't know which one it is, but maybe you can help me with that, George.
Well, it's not, it's a false dichotomy, because both of these are true. The blood of the people of the global South, the blood of Arabs, the blood of Muslims, the blood of Persians is worth to them far, far less than the blood of Westerners. And of course, Israelis are Westerners. I mean, literally, in most cases. General Westmoreland, famously at the height of the Vietnam War, had to explain how it was that if you are killing so many of these Vietnamese, how come they're still fighting? And so he coined the phrase that they don't value their own lives or human lives in general in the same way that we in the West do, which of course is a monstrous untruth. What he had to avoid saying was that for some people there are worse things than death. Dishonor is worse than death. Surrender to an aggressor is worse than death. Living like a slave is worse than death. That's the difference between some of us and some of them. But the truth is now, you say, why don't journalists ask this? Why don't people say this? Here's all that needs to be said. The whole world is now at war, facing economic catastrophe, to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. which were entirely open until America and Israel attacked Iran. So we're now going to war, including a war on the ground, to reopen the straits that were never closed until we invaded them. Milo Minderbender, Joseph Heller, Catch 22, you are redundant. Today's leaders make you look like a very second-rate satirist indeed. Here's some comments now that have come through. Antonio Cristoforo, good friend of the show, says the Zionists in the West Bank don't care if you're Muslim or Christian. They want you out. Recently, they evicted a Christian village and its priests from their church before demolition. And Stop and Listen sends $5 US. Thank you for that. In an era of nuclear weapons, we must never underestimate the evil power of Zionism. These are deranged people capable of destroying the world. And Jerry Mackay says, who knew Iran would save the world from US, UK, EU imperialism? I did, having admired them in the 80s, but my love grew when, fresh from their revolution, they attended the funeral of volunteer Bobby Sands MP. Jeffrey Stroman says, Jeffrey Sachs says Iran is being carpet bombed. Indeed, it is. By B-52s, the same carpet bombers who bombed and killed millions of Vietnamese and Cambodian people. Bumbling Boris Buffoon says Israel is the biggest cause of anti-Semitism worldwide. Who can deny that? Some fools still do. Alan in Wigan on Russia and Iran. On you go, Alan.
Hello, George. Can you hear me?
Very clearly. Go ahead.
And your family are well, George. Thanks for taking the call. George, where do I start? There's so much evil going on in this world. We need notes now more than ever. All your wonderful guests and regular callers, I pay tribute to them all. They're all brilliant. George, I did have high hopes of Trump when he won the election, but my God, he has let the world down big time. The death and destruction in the Middle East is totally unnecessary. He has to be compromised, like I think you said before, the Epstein class. A couple of hours ago, Professor Morandi was interviewed by Judge Neapolitano, the professor, an absolute gentleman, a scholar. I have never seen him so emotional. He went into detail regarding the killing of the 165 little girls and teachers. He is convinced, and so am I, that the US and Israel knew exactly what they were doing. A double tap tomahawk hit. Professor Morandi broke down. I broke down just watching it, George. Extremely moving. The judge paid tribute to him. God bless him. George, do you think Russia will get involved in this conflict now? I mean, I just don't know what to say.
I'm sure. I'm not in Russia. I can't speak for Russia, but my educated guess is that they will not, because they're already fighting NATO. 25 at least countries in NATO on their own borders. So I don't believe they're going to get involved in a war in West Asia. But Iran is an important ally for them, and I'm certain that they're doing whatever they can short of involvement to assist Iran. And in any case, Iran is giving the Yanks a bloody good hiding. That's the truth of the matter. Just take a look at the pictures. The Iranians are giving the American armed forces a bloody good hiding. And that's the reason for the accelerated cognitive decline of the American president, Donald J. Trump. Let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls all the way up to Gayatri on the social media news roundup. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As vicious as the Twitter sphere, where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, this poll's going crazy tonight. 60,000 people have answered yes or no to the question, should Iran build a nuclear weapon? You've got about just less than 10 minutes to cast your vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Please subscribe to my channel, and on patreon.com/George Galloway. Let's talk with Tom in New York on Iran and Epstein. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, George. It's an honor to speak with you again. Best wishes for a blessed Holy Week and Easter. I'm also happy that Manchester United is third place in the Premier League, so that's at least good news in all this bad news.
We're back.
Regarding the war,
we're back, Tom.
We're back. We're back. You were right in August when I called, so you kept the faith. So did I. Yeah. Regarding the war with Iran, Colonel Douglas McGregor made a great point about medical and food supplies here in the United States. Quote, if you need any medication of any kind, you should go out and buy it before things get worse. In my case, I'm trying to get 90 days of medical supplies instead of the regular 30 days. Encourage all your listeners to do the same throughout the world. I also wanted to thank you for remembering the 1999 NATO bombing of Yugoslavia earlier this week. I think it was the first Epstein war, as it was a distraction from the Monica Lewinsky scandal as congressional hearings were about to begin. For instance, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were photographed in the White House in 1993. During a recent congressional hearing, you could see President Clinton's hand shake when he saw the painting of him in a blue Monica Lewinsky dress that was found in Epstein's home. So I think that was very disconcerting and may be a key link here. And to follow up with our boomerang conversations, the U.S. Treasury admitted, and it was published in Fortune magazine earlier this week, the U.S. Treasury is bankrupt. We have $6.06 trillion in assets and $47.8 trillion in liabilities. We're $41.7 trillion in the hole. We're worse than broke. No one wants our debt. Other countries are dumping it at alarming speed, especially after President Biden kicked the Russians out of SWIFT. So I'm very concerned here for the long term. I hope and pray during this Holy Week that President Trump reconsiders attacking Cargill Island, because if that happens, then it's all over. Not only militarily, economically, and so on. So I think that's an important point going forward here. He has a chance. I was watching
it's important. It's an important point, Tom, and beautifully made. And I'm grateful to you for making it. The world changes the moment American boots hit the ground. Then they will be there for many years. And you see the mission creep already. What was going to be a 48-hour operation is now, according to J.D. Vance this afternoon, we're not talking about being in Iran in a year or 2 years from now. So it became, we're not actually going to stay for more than 2 years. Of course, a very large number will not be staying at all, except in their graves. The Vietnam War began, as I said, with the landing of exactly the same number of U.S. Marines, 3,500. In that case, in Da Nang in 1965. You think of what happened in the Vietnam War between 1965, 3,500, and the final debacle of the helicopters clattering off the roof of the embassy in Ho Chi Minh City as now, and the sheer volume of suffering of the Vietnamese people, the Cambodian people, the Laotian people, but also the American people that were sent by their politicians and drafted, so to be, by their politicians. The American GIs, average age of whom, as we were famously reminded in a very popular song, time to bring that out again, actually, 19. Tom, thanks for that. It's only right we recognize the people who keep this program going on behind the scenes. Your support allows us to stay independent and continuing to do what we do. So we want to pay our thanks this evening to some more topmost donors. Big thank you to Felix Oram, Douglas Snowden, Erica K. Dobe, Lynn Timperley, and Mashid Amir Shahi. Thank you very much, you and the rest of you who've either given to the extent of your ability to give or who will do so by the end of this evening. I appreciate it. Moats.tv. Click the Donate Now button anywhere on the site and give what you can. You can also support the show through patreon.com/George Galloway. Wayne is in Cheshire in England on nuclear weapons. Wayne, welcome. What do you want to say?
It's a privilege to be on the show. Now, I've always agreed with you and most of the audience about Iran should have nuclear weapons to be able to protect itself and understand, obviously, the rationale of that. But about an hour ago when I was watching your show, I had the most beautifulest spiritual experience with the Holy Spirit. And it said to me, what would Jesus say to that vote? And I thought deep down it said, just search your soul. Now, I'm sure you know, and everyone else knows, Jesus would say no. We have to understand that the God, Jesus, Holy Spirit is beyond our comprehension. And we are just silly, stupid humans. So I say no, and I would try to do, even though it goes against my common sense, what Jesus would say.
Well, I think that's an absolutely legitimate standpoint. It is the standpoint of the Iranian government. That's why they don't have a nuclear weapon. They believe that weapons of mass destruction, not just nuclear, but chemical and biological, they eschewed those chemical and biological weapons, which they could easily have made during the Western-backed invasion by Iraq against them in the 1980s, even though we were supplying chemical and biological weapons to the invading Iraqi forces. So that is their position. They believe that the use of weapons of mass destruction, which they define as weapons unlimited in time and space, in other words, they don't die, these weapons, once you've fired them, and they don't necessarily stay in the place that you fired them, that they can spread to entirely innocent and uninvolved people, and a generation or two generations from now still be toxic, harmful, deadly. So that is their point of view, and I feel sure you're right that Jesus would vote no on our poll. But I think in a world where a country is literally right now being attacked by two nuclear weapons powers and carpet bombed with thousands of innocent civilian casualties, including the most vulnerable, it's asking a bit much that they should not arm themselves sufficiently to deter it. Some more comments. Rinkrat Hockey says, Baron Trump, enlist in the military, or are you a coward like your father? Well, he's too tall, you see. He's 6'9", and that's the reason why he's not enlisting. He's too tall. That evil jerk, Shapiro, even though they've now changed the enlistment upper limit to 42, and he's 42, he ain't going to enlist either. These chicken hawk pieces of shit are ready to fight to the last drop of your children's blood, but they definitely don't intend to shed their own. M. Lee says, haha, I want Ben Shapiro to lead the charge. He can use his eyebrows as cover. And Bobby Lennox, God bless his soul, 1910, Bobby Lennox, 1910. Wake up, Erdogan, you're next on Netanyahu's list. And Ian McKillop, 1774, says, I said no because nukes are ridiculously expensive. You get more bang for your buck with ballistic missiles, so to speak. And Average Canadian 68 sends us $5 Canadian. Thank you for that. What is Zelensky doing in Saudi Arabia? Hasn't he lined his pockets and stolen enough money from his own people? There's a legend on the line. It's Tommy in Glasgow. Go on yourself, Tommy.
Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brother George.
Walaikum salam. Very nice to hear your voice again, my dear brother.
Even better to hear your voice. Always good. So, peace and blessings to your good self, your wife. Sorry to hear about exclusion from the UK at the moment. Well, I'm slightly a bit jealous. I've been wanting to leave this country for. It's gone to the hell, and may you and your family be safe, and all power to yourself and your lovely show, and thanks for allowing me to come on. I wanted to just share a few be grateful for everything that we've been given and not to moan, and be thankful for the gifts that were all bestowed upon us, because, you know, look at what's going on in the world and people having bombs dropped on them by this earth. You know, the dogs of Satan are cutting about in the veins of Trump, Netanyahu. There was a little story I listened to during the blessed month of Ramadan, which was in a monk and it was quite what he'd encountered, and the head monk said to him, "Are only allowed 2 words, 2 years?" And he said, "Okay, let's go." It was elapsed, and the head monk visited and said, "What's that time?" Words. It said, "Duly noted." 2 years later, elapsed. "Again, this is the time for you to have your 2 words. Brother's bad." The monk said, "Duly noted." Again, the 2 years have passed, and the head monk went back to the young monk and said, "I'm again for you to speak." And he said, "I quit." You know, it's not... Ever since you got here, you've been moaning. Thankful for the fact that they're on of hell will meet their maker at some point. Us in this life to strengthen ourselves, to be ready for the final reckoning, because surely it is upon us now. Evildoers who are spreading in the last 100 or so years, they take it to. And if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, Christians can't even go to the place of worship. Beit al-Maqdis have been closed. Evil are these people are they going to take us to? And I'm sorry, as a Muslim, I mean, I can sit and point, and I've done many times at the Muslim leaders, but every Muslim out there, we have failed the people of the world. The Jews of Andalusia called their time under the Muslim caliphate there their golden age. Have failed, not the leaders, but each person. Strengthen ourselves for this final reckoning that is coming upon the world. We have to become closer to God. Jews as well, Buddhists, everyone. We have to, a time of ignorance, we have to actually being close and having a connection with the one true God. Revolutionary act. And every day I sit in supplication 5 times a day, of the Creator, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, of all the earths, and ask forgiveness that we're not doing enough. Were you doing this show, George?
Well, look, we're not, Tommy. We're not doing enough. That much is undeniable. But many of us are doing the opposite of what we should be. We're not doing enough. That's more or less everybody. When I'm watching the Celtic instead of writing on Facebook, I'm not doing enough. When I am enjoying more food than is healthy for me, I'm not doing enough. But we have a very significant number of people who are positively doing harm, who are a part of the evil, who are a part of the devil's work. Now, it's clear to me, and it is to you also, I know, the case that a very large number of people who claim that they believe in the judgment day cannot possibly do so. Otherwise, they would not be doing what they are doing. If they really believed that their fate in the other life is being determined by their actions and inactions here and now in this life, they quite obviously would not do it. Because who would deliberately do things that will doom them to an eternity in the hellfires? Who will rob themselves of the possibility of what I still hope I have a possibility of, being a part of the reunion of all the good people that I have ever met or known, or wished I had met or known. Forever? Eternity? Seeing my wife again for eternity? Why would you turn your face against that? Why would you sin in these enormous crimes if you really believed that there was another life? And so, many of these people, maybe even most of these people, in power and wealth, who were fasting like you in Ramadan, who were celebrating the Eid like you in Ramadan, many of them, maybe most of them, with power and wealth in the Muslim world, are not actual believers at all. They cannot be believers, or they would not behave as they do. Got another legend on the line, Thomas, so I'll need to say goodbye. It's the legend in New York, Erobos. He wants to talk about the poll. Welcome back, Erobos.
Salutations and greetings and fidelitous facilitations. I'm tripping over my own tongue here. Of course, more power to Clan Galloway. I found out that Jai the Magnificent, first of her name, well planted in life, is not doing well today. And her sister Lila the Lively, first of her name, has taken her place. They sound like twins. You couldn't tell them apart, sixpence and all that. So I wish he's doing well. Okay. I hope even Trita Parsi, who didn't make his appearance, even though from our understanding he's not in Iran. We never know what's going on these days, right? So, I hope him and his loved ones are doing well. I was looking forward to hearing him. It occurred to me as you were explaining your writings on Facebook that I was wondering if you could start like a website, because these writings, like your response to Lance, I'm going to clip that. That was stellar, and it reminds me of something I requested of you years ago. And if I had the money to walk the talk, I would actually donate to this in terms of your memoirs. It should, because Facebook can switch you off at any time they feel like, and all those writings and all that stuff will be gone. So I'm thinking that you should find a way to copy those writings, put them on the website for posterity, and along with your insights, right? Like the short, you used to do short video clips like a year or two back, like when you were in Yugoslavia, in Serbia, you did a clip explaining things and showing the buildings. You know, like that there with Lance, I'm definitely going to clip that. That was a lesson. You know, it could be Galloway's perspectives or insight or whatever, and that needs to be preserved from my view, because, you know, you just don't get that anywhere. You know, you have to read 50 books, you know, and figure out which one is right or wrong. So there should be a website dedicated, like there's the Moats TV, and people should donate to it, and much thanks to the donors making my call possible. So, you know, now that I've gotten that out the way, I just want to segue into the poll. You know, I've been following Professor Marandi's Telegram, like he encourages to do, to see his latest interviews, and I've learned a lot in terms of like what you mentioned not that long ago about the fatwa starting with chemical weapons, and it just sort of overrolled and dovetailed into the nuclear weapons. But I also learned from him that there was a lot of forgiveness that they had for the family Arab Gulf gas oil dictatorships, #Fagad. You know, there's a lot of forgiveness for them for their past crimes, starting from Saddam, coming all the way down, right, where they supported Saddam and the other two attacks on Iran. And, you know, from my own personal experience, keeping your enemies closer than your friends only gets you hurt, right? It gets you hurt real bad. And I don't do that. I know if you keep these weak people at a distance and treat them the way they are, you know, they stay in their lane. They stay well behaved. But you embrace them and you forgive them. It emboldens them, and it gives them ideas beyond their station to attack you. And this is where we are now. So I understand that their religious ideology and morality compels them to do this. But, you know, how far are you going to go with that, right? How many blows you're going to allow your people to absorb and to take, you know, and then the pendulum eventually swings the other way, and they go to the other extreme and say, well, okay, you know, we're going to start killing everyone now. So it has to be a balance in between there. So I just wanted to share these perspectives, and looking forward to the...
well, I'm glad you did, Robus, and let me share with you that I entirely share your perspective. The turning the other cheek has never been for me. If somebody slaps me, I slap them back twice. And if I can bring them to the ground by the throat, I'll do that. Now I'm getting on a bit, but I've got strong sons, so I'm not the meek shall inherit the earth type of guy, as maybe some of you have already worked out, and I don't forgive my enemies, and I don't keep my enemies close. I keep my friends closer, and I restrict the number of friends that I've got and allowed to be close. So your other points are well taken. I only plead poverty of time. We are so overwhelmed with work, not just this show and all that comes with it, but all the other interviews and television work that I have to do. And we simply lack the time and the resources to do it. So here's an idea. Somebody else can do it. There used to be a guy on YouTube called the Gallowayist who recorded all of my talk sport work. And that was valuable because when I got sacked from TalkSport, they deleted all these priceless clashes and spectacular arguments that I had on TalkSport. But the Gallowayist kind of turned against me a bit over some political difference that we had. But I don't think he ever destroyed those things. And so others can do it. Just copy and paste what it is that I write. Now, I take your point. Facebook can switch me off anytime that they like. But they are not switching me off at this point in time. And as I said, in the last 28 days, 101 million people, think about that, looked at my videos, read my articles, and hundreds of thousands of people engaged with those videos and those articles. So for me, at this point in time, not for everybody and not for all time, Facebook is easily the most influential, 10 to 1, 9 to 1, compared to YouTube, for example. I have 9 to 1 ratio on Facebook. So what we try to do, Erebos, is never to place all our eggs in one basket, but always to seek the maximum number of baskets that we can place our eggs in. Speaking of eggs, here's the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
So the cardinal being denied entry on Palm Sunday in Jerusalem is one thing. There seems to be more news today coming out on what looks to be like a crusade against Christianity. I read that during a Europa League game in February between the Serbian Red Star Belgrade and the French Lille, the fans of the Red Star Belgrade, they displayed a humongous tifo, what they call it, of one of their patron saints. It's Saint Simeon. He is most revered. He is also known as Stefan Nemanja. He is the father of Serbia and defender of the Orthodox faith here. As it happens, Serbia has 78 official patron saints, which in Serbia is a national holiday where the people honor and celebrate their family's patron saint. So it's a very big thing in this country. And when the fans of Red Star Belgrade displayed this tifo, it came with the text, "May our faith lead you to victory." Well, UEFA was not so pleased with that and fined them with 95,000 euros today. Then, in March, a football team in Lille played against Aston Villa and they displayed a huge tifo of Joan of Arc, displaying "The French will never die." Now, Joan of Arc is, of course, another patron saint of France, honored as the defender of France. And them, too, they were fined the sum of 83,000 euros. So UEFA says that displaying this message is not fit for a sporting event and bringing the reputation of football and UEFA into disrepute. I mean, talk about reputation, because meanwhile, in Germany, there is some football club called Kaiserslautern. Ever heard of Kaiserslautern FC? Well, they erected this huge tifo of Satan himself, with the words in Latin saying, "Hear us, Lucifer, rise from the abyss and accept our souls." Not a word from UEFA.
No fine.
No.
So the devil is acceptable, but Saint Simeon is not. Joan of Arc is not. I mean, is there any organization in the entire world with less reputation than UEFA and FIFA?
Seemingly not. Seemingly not. So that was just on the seeming ongoing crusade on Christianity. Now, on a different matter, on this day on 29th March in 1951, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sentenced. They were found guilty of espionage and then sentenced to death. Now, who were Julius and Ethel Rosenberg? They were an American husband and wife, a couple, who were accused of passing U.S. state secrets to the Soviet Union. There was a worldwide campaign for mercy, but it failed. And so they became the first American civilians to be executed for espionage during peacetime. Well, I say peacetime, but it was, of course, the heat of the Cold War, in which there was a witch hunt on alleged communists and socialists worldwide, and there was the geopolitical struggle between the capitalist West, America, and the socialist bloc, the Soviet Union, which then, of course, fell in 1991, and then America assumed world power, and held on to this hegemony until today, because now they're struggling mightily to hold on to it as other countries, other blocs are rising and going against this unipolar world. Another connection between the Rosenbergs and today's world is that there was one particular man who was advocating heavily for the death sentence, the penalty, the electric chair at Sing Sing prison, for not just Julius, but also the wife, because people were claiming mercy for her as the mother of their two children. But no, this one person relentlessly went for both of them to be sentenced to death, and that is Roy Cohn. Over to you.
Roy Cohn, of course, the political mentor of Donald J. Trump, and quite possibly also a homosexual lover of Donald J. Trump. If you watch the movie we watched on the plane,
The Apprentice,
you'll see a very clear implication that not only was Trump in thrall to Roy Cohn, who became Trump's lawyer and advocate and short sword fighter in his battles with officialdom in the New York City Council and so on when Trump was on his way up, but that Roy Cohn taught the evil, dark arts to Donald J. Trump, and that Trump, who famously doesn't drink alcohol, is depicted in the movie breaking his lifelong abstinence and getting drunk and spending the night in Roy Cohn's grisly embrace. So Roy Cohn, the man who brought us Donald J. Trump as a political figure, was the man who drove the demand as a lawyer on the team, in the prosecution team at the time, for the execution of both Julius and Ethel. It is a matter of great shame that the United States did that. The children, for those who are interested, were immediately adopted by a very fine American Jewish communist family, and the father of that family wrote that wonderful socialist anthem, Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Sang by...
I think that's probably all we've got time for.
Yes, it is.
But there was one anniversary you didn't mention. This is our wedding anniversary. We had 3 weddings in the course of 2012, but this is the first of them. So happy anniversary, hon.
Happy anniversary, honey.
And we spent it with you, which is what we prefer to do. So thanks very much for being with us on our wedding anniversary. God willing, we'll be back on Wednesday with the midweek show, but we can only stay twice a week on air with the midweek show with your support, and we need it. So please, now, right now, go to moats.tv and leave a donation of whatever you can. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.